Hi and welcome to the latest episode of One Patriots Place Live, brought to you by E2G And if you are listening on podcast, thank you for downloading. Please do not forget to rate, review and subscribe. Happy New Year to all. 2023 is now upon us. Today we are your hosts, Thomas Murphy, Claire Classy, Claire Cooper. We do need to mention that Steve is dialing back his Patriots coverage and he will be taking a sabbatical from One Patriots Place. You can still find his great work at patsfans.com, but that is kind of where he's solely going to be now. So we will be without our third musketeer for a while. So you'll have to put up with me and Murph for now. But we welcome in, if you have got it on YouTube, as you can see, today we have one of the smartest guys on the Patriots beat. From Patriots.com, it is the beautiful mind, and of course he brought the rest of him as well. It is Evan Nazar. Evan, welcome back to the show. How are things with you?
Murph, notice how she didn't say beautiful face though, right? Just the mind.
I knew I was going to get some grief. I knew that there was no way that I was going to do that. I genuinely thought Murph would be the one to give me some crap, to be honest, Evan. I actually thought you'd be way nicer than that, and Murph would be the one to give me some grief.
Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Every day after this, I have to go and look at a picture of my wife that I have right over here, just to remind myself that I was good enough to get a woman that's this good looking. And I'm sure that you have a picture of Garen, right there next to you. So just sit back and enjoy the fact that we outkicked our coverage.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I never said any of that. I just said he had a beautiful mind and brought the rest of him with him. That is
I say that every single day that I outkicked my coverage, and I'm proud of it.
Me too.
I went out there
Me
and
too.
I for all of the nerds and all the under 6 foot tall guys out there, absolutely nailed it. So there's nothing wrong with that.
That's it. Have you gotten to the point? Have you gotten to the point yet where you've been out with your wife and somebody sends her a drink?
I have not been to that point yet, but
this has happened to me on several occasions, and
I don't know how I'd react to that.
Thank you No, you just turn and you say thank you very much.
Yeah,
thanks. That's one less Mai Tai that I have to buy the wife. She's still going home with me.
See, I nearly put in my intro the one half of Catch 22 that does have a girlfriend, but then I thought that was really harsh against Alex. I know Alex is great. It's just that they burn him really bad on PU and stuff like that, and I just thought that would be amusing. And then I thought, I can't do that. That can't be my first introduction.
You do know Alex watches every week. He's going to hear that.
Yeah, okay, but if he is watching, Alex, obviously that was just for comedic effect. I didn't do that, and I wouldn't do it to him because he is lovely. So
amazing.
A rebound.
Alex keeps his personal life personal, and we just like to,
That's what it is. He just is keeping it a secret from everyone.
He could have hordes of girlfriends, and you just don't know hordes of them.
Yep, he's the reason Giselle filed for divorce. Okay, I'm letting it out of the bag now. Easy, welcome back. It's been far too long. It's been far too long. What's the matter with my face, Chris? Chris Godwin over here in the thing. I don't know what's the matter with my face. Well, yeah, I do, but I'm not gonna. Easy. Were you surprised at Sunday's outcome at all, and the way that so many in Patriots Nation seem to be, even with the backup quarterbacks under center for Miami?
No, I wasn't too surprised because this team at this point wins with their defense, right? And when you win with your defense so consistently, you just don't get a ton of games where you get blowouts, even if against a backup quarterback, right? And I think that at times this year, like the Lions game, for example, I guess you could point to one where they did have a defensive shutout or more of a defensive blowout type of game. But when you're playing in the margins like this offensively and defensively is what's really driving the bus, you're going to be in a lot of these games that are 23-21, 23-20, in that range. And that's really where the Patriots need to play. And I think that that's what the concern is about the team, whether it's against Buffalo next week or if they do squeak into the playoffs, is can you beat a Josh Allen? Can you beat a Joe Burrow 23-21? All right.
Yep.
Can you get them to that point? I know they held Burrow to 22, but it wasn't enough, right? And that wasn't the defense's fault, certainly, but that was where it was at. So I wasn't surprised because I thought that Bridgewater would have some streaky moments in this game, just because of the injuries that the Patriots had in the secondary on defense. But eventually the Patriots defense would figure him out in the second half and do what they do. So I wasn't shocked, but I was hoping, I think ultimately the first drive of the game and then that drive in the fourth quarter for the offense, you're obviously hoping to see a little bit more than 2 drives against that banged up Dolphins defense. And we can certainly get to some of that, I'm sure, here in a second.
We will.
Yeah.
Before we get to anything like that, because before we jump into any of these topics, because I want to grasp my moment whilst I have it, because I don't get them very often, especially if I'm here with just Murph because he likes to talk so much. Evan, I have to ask you. You've been mentioning this on Patriots Unfiltered. A Hunter trade? Come on, dude. What are you trying to push? That's just not on. What is your deal?
Okay, so just for the record, we were asked the question by a caller, what is like a surprise move that could happen in the offseason due to the salary cap, right? Who is somebody that could potentially be a cap casualty? And the immediate reaction to that was, well, can we get out of Jonnu Smith's contract? And unfortunately, you can't get out of Jonnu Smith's contract, but you can get out of Hunter Henry's contract, right? So all I was saying was that there is an out in Hunter Henry's contract. Now, I'm not advocating for them taking that out, but they do save $10 million on the salary cap by releasing Hunter Henry this offseason. That's just the fact of the matter. I wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying that that's an option that they could do if they were to say, want to go out there and make a big swing for a wide receiver. Like let's just use DeAndre Hopkins as an example. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's just use DeAndre Hopkins as an example. But they want to go out and make that big swing, but they don't want to allocate their entire free cap space to it, and they need to make some moves to get under the cap a little bit more. That was sort of the question that was posed to us. And really, when you look at the contracts, it's Hunter Henry. I mean, technically you could get out of Trent Brown's deal, but he's a bargain for next year at $7 million. So it just doesn't really seem to make a ton of sense to walk away from that contract. And that's really it. I mean, all the other guys from last year's free agency class are expensive to get rid of, and I don't think that they will.
But ultimately, isn't it a case of he's the better tight end, so why would you get rid of him? Because you'd still need to just replace him. So
oh, absolutely. And I don't think that is really something that will be on the table. I just think that there is, look, it didn't work out with both tight ends as much as we were hoping it to work out. I'm not saying that both of them have been horrible players. Hunter Henry's certainly been the much better player, more productive player, and a good player in this offense for 2 seasons. But the duo and making that be sort of the vocal point of the offense when based off of their salaries, right? Based off of what they paid those 2 guys hasn't really worked out. So now at this point, I think you have to start thinking about allocating your money elsewhere and just knowing how the Patriots operate when it comes to the salary cap. They look at it from a position group standpoint. So like, we want to allocate this much money to the skill group, this much money to the secondary, this much money to the front. And if they're putting in a $25 million wide receiver, then you're going to have to take out something from that group because they're not going to put in, they already have, I think, one of the highest paid skill position groups in the league because of the free agency spree. And have they produced like that? Not really. So I think Nelson Aguilar obviously comes off the books. Could something happen with Kendrick Bourne? Potentially, just because he's certainly fallen out of favor with the coaching staff. Jacoby Myers is a free agent that I think the team would like to re-sign, and I think they'd like to bring back Hunter Henry, and Jonnu Smith is kind of stuck here. So that's kind of the breakdown of it.
Not to sort of stay on tight ends, because I know obviously Murph wants to move on, but just a quick question from that. I know you can only answer with opinion, but do you think, or have you seen that we only seem to see production from Hunter Henry? We only really see them utilize him in the way that you'd expect him to be utilized significantly when Jonnu Smith isn't around, when he's not on the field. Have you noticed this? Because I don't know if I'm sort of seeing something that isn't necessarily there, but it just seems to me that every time that we see this uptake in the usage of Hunter, the increase in how they're supposed to use him for the kind of tight end that he is, it always seems to be when Jonnu Smith isn't around, specifically not on the field. But at the moment, again, he's out with injury, and it just seems like last time he was out with injury, they seem to use Hunter way better. It just seems a bit of a weird phenomenon, or am I just completely missing a point here?
Well, I do think that what we would call 12 personnel, right? Their 2 tight end package has not been very productive over the last 2 seasons. And honestly, they haven't used it that much relative to what they're paying those 2 guys. You would think that that would basically be their base package, and it really hasn't been. And what we've noticed, I think, from the last 2 seasons, and I think a lot of this stems from the quarterback as well, and just what Mac Jones is most comfortable with running, is he's an 11 personnel quarterback, and they're a much better 11 personnel offense. 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 back, spread the field, shotgun formation. And when they get into those types of things, I think when they signed Hunter Henry, the hope was that he would be their go-to guy in key situations, right? 3rd down, red area, like that sort of stuff. Not necessarily the 1st and 2nd down guy that's going to get you down the field between the 20s, but when it's 3rd and 5, somebody that they can go to. And I think when we see that they get into those situations, he's involved and he's a factor on 3rd down. Certainly was a factor on 3rd down on Sunday, and that's a good thing for this Patriots offense. Look, everybody I think is on the same page when you say more Hunter Henry is good for this offense. Whenever they get him involved, and whenever he is a factor in the game, and we go out, after the game and we all write about him, and he has a scrum at his locker, and like he's had a good game. They always seem to win whenever Hunter Henry has a good game. Like the last time I remember talking to him in the locker room and really having a big conversation with him after a game was against Cleveland. I think he had a couple touchdowns in that game, or at least 1 touchdown, and was a big part of it, right? In Minnesota on Thanksgiving night, big part of it, even though they lost that game. I just feel like when the offense plays well, we always can write a blurb or talk to Hunter Henry about, hey, he had a good game today, right? And then when the offense doesn't play well, it feels like he's 1 catch, 8 yards, and you're like, well, why weren't they throwing to the tight ends?
To me, it was just, sorry, Murph, it's just, I get what you're saying in regards to like the personnel and stuff like that, but they did bring in Matt Sokol yesterday, so he was there. It just seems quite specifically, and as I said, it might be something that I'm seeing that's not really there. It's just very specific that when Jonnu Smith doesn't have to be, I don't want to say they have to kind of make a situation for him, but when they don't have to factor him in, shall we say, that's a better way of putting it, when they don't have to factor Jonnu Smith into anything when he's not on the field, that seems to be the time that they use Hunter in the right way, for want of a much better way of describing it.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I just look, when Hunter Henry is the only tight end available, he plays every snap, right? That's what happened on Sunday, and he's going to be more involved. And I think that's a big part of it. And I don't know. I think that they approach those tight ends in very situational capacities where Jonnu Smith has his role on early downs. Hunter Henry has his role on 3rd down and red zone. And that's the way that they kind of look at it, almost like how they would look at running backs, right? Where, this guy's an early down, 1st and 2nd down back. This guy's a 3rd down back. This guy does a little bit of all of it, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily been the best thing for them, because in some respects, it kind of makes them a different offense with whether this tight end versus that tight end is on the field. But it is interesting to see that Hunter Henry will just, whenever there's more exposure to Hunter Henry, whether it's because he's has increased playing time, he's more involved in the game plan, he's being targeted more by the quarterback, it always seems to benefit the offense.
just to piggyback that, just to piggyback that, it almost seems like there's less telegraphing when Hunter Henry is in for that many snaps and he's not being moved in and out. Defenders aren't keying on him. Okay, they lose track, and the less what's the word I'm looking for, predictable a situation is, the better it is for the entire offense. And it just seems with those two, as Evan said, okay, here comes Smith, we can expect this package. Here's Hunter, then we can expect this package. And I do, man. I think the more he's on the field and the less that Smith is, the better for this offense. There's too many keys that an opposing defense can lock in on when it's the constant flip in and out of the two of them. That's just the way I see it. Let's flip back to the other side of the ball. How impressed were you, Easy, with the defense's ability? Something that I called for in my keys was to shut down the Dolphins' running attack from the get-go.
Yeah, honestly, I was absolutely flabbergasted by this game.
I knew you were going to say the word.
I just, yep. I'm sorry. I think he's a great offensive mind. I love what he does with motion, play action,
yep.
RPO, and Tua's in there. Like, for me, this is like a new age, nerd football fever dream when you watch the Dolphins, right? You got these two 4-2 receivers. You got a coach that knows how to get them into space and runs all this misdirection and motion and all this kind of stuff. And then they come into this game against the Patriots and they try to come right at the Patriots in the running game. Like, they just try to run counter, power, outside zone lead, like all these plays that are just like downhill concepts, right? Yep. And the one thing that we've seen with the Patriots over the years is that when you can get those bigger linebackers, Bentley, Tavai, Godshon Guy on the line of scrimmage, when you can get those guys going sideline to sideline and horizontally stretch the defense to go vertical, eventually they don't do a good job of running with people, right? Like, this is not a very athletic first down front seven, right? They're going to put Bentley out there. They're going to put Godshon on the nose. They're going to put Larry Guy out there still doing his thing. And if you can get those guys running east-west, they can really have problems with that.
Right.
And what shocked me was McDaniel was in San Francisco in 2020 when they did basically threw like 100 passes behind the line of scrimmage, and all they were doing was stretching the defense horizontally the entire game. And they shredded the Patriots, 33 points in that game. And granted, it's a much different personnel, much different defense all these years later, but I don't think that at the core of it, it's all that different of a matchup for the Dolphins. And I was just absolutely shocked with the game plan, especially in the run game. Like, they didn't even try to get Mostert out on the edge at all. They were running those toss plays, but they're wind back plays where they're trying to toss it and then get it back up through the middle.
Right.
And Jawan Bentley, McMillan.
They didn't over pursue.
The guys on the D line, like, they were just like, if you want to come right at us, like,
yeah, thank you.
Right. Well, we'll take it every single time. And I actually tweeted it out yesterday, just kind of teasing the Dolphins a little bit, because why not? And I was like, oh yeah, like, let's just run right at the Patriots, 320-pound nose tackle. Like, that's a great idea. And Devon Godshon liked the tweet. So,
did he really?
So clearly the people in the locker room for the Patriots were like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are they running right at us? And first down, it seemed like they tried to run the ball a lot, Miami, and I thought the Patriots just did what they do in terms of run defense, and we're sure, like, if you want to play this game in a phone booth, then by all means, let's play.
By all means. Thank you very, very much, man. Anything that's going to save me 6 steps to the left or right, I'm all for.
Yeah.
How important is it for this defensive line to have Christian Barmore back?
I love Christian Barmore.
Right.
I just love the energy and the explosiveness that he brings to that group. I don't think anybody on that group, and I know Dietrich Wise had a really good year, but I don't think anybody on the line brings the type of high-end athleticism and explosiveness that Barmore brings to the table. It's clear that he is the best in potential or the highest ceiling of anybody in that group by far. And, 7 quarterback pressures was a career high for him in this game. Had the really good run stuff as well in this one too. Just a menace on the line. And I posted a clip in my film review of E2G, Wise, Barmore, and Matthew Judon rushing the passer on a play in the fourth quarter. I mean, good luck. Like, if you can block that group, like, good luck. E2G comes off the left side, forces Skylar Thompson to step up in the pocket, and Barmore just has the right guard on skates and is bull rushing them right back into the pocket. So when Skylar Thompson steps up, Barmore just bear hugs him and sacks him. That group is really dynamic. It's really scary. Judon on the other side should have drawn a hold. The guy had the right tackle had him by his neck and they didn't call it, which seems to be pretty typical with Judon. He can't draw a flag to save his life.
Right?
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, it's almost like in the original. Oh God, why am I at a loss for the I'm at a loss for the movie. With him getting clotheslined on every single freaking play, and he can't buy a flag.
Yeah.
The guy can't buy a flag. You could literally call holding on every single down.
Yeah.
When he rushes the passer, and a couple when he's dropping back into coverage.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of how they used to officiate Gronk, where like Gronk was just it's kind of like Shaq too, right? Like these guys are just these freak athletes, and I know Judon might not be on those two guys' level necessarily, but with Gronk it was always bear hugs. He was always getting killed out there, and because he was 6'7" and 260 pounds, they just let it happen a lot of the time.
Yep.
And I feel the same way with Judon, but I just thought that and really the biggest thing with Barmore is that those edge guys are getting after it every single week. Now that those quarterbacks start stepping up in the pocket because those edge guys are coming after them, Barmore is now collapsing the middle of the pocket, and all of a sudden there's no place to go for the QB. So next week against Josh Allen, assuming hopefully, knock on wood, that DeMar Hamlin is okay and they're able to play this game. And it just looks to me like that's really the game plan, really for this team every week, and should be every week. And I know we've talked about it in the past, Murph, the trash compactor strategy, the mush rush. It drives me nuts. Like it drives me nuts when they do that. And I get why they do it. And I get the premise behind it. Mm-hmm. But in the NFL, if you're just bull rushing the offensive line every single time, like these guys get paid too. And like, you're not going to get a ton of pressure doing that. Even if you are able to keep the guy in the pocket, the quarterback in the pocket, he's just going to sit there with all day.
It's true, because the offensive line is just going to start run blocking the entire game. You know, when you come at them at a wave and a wave and a wave, as a former offensive lineman, folks, I can tell you, we stop pass blocking and we just start hitting and driving you back.
Right.
And so, point well made, bud.
Yeah. It's, whenever they do that against like the Josh Allen types, it drives me up a wall. It's like, I'm just sitting there in the press box. Go and get them, right? Like go get them. Like you're just sitting there letting them beat you, and he's doing Josh Allen things, and he's all happy-go-lucky about it because he's freaking Josh Allen, and it's just like, go get the quarterback because this defense isn't good enough in the back end.
He just waits for the hole to open up, and then he takes it, and the next thing you know, you're moving the chains 15 or 20 yards down the road. You're exactly right. So put me and Phil Perry right into our place right there with that 3 minutes. Go ahead, Claire.
See, I love it that I am the same as Evan does when I'm watching a game, shouting, "Go and get him," because that's what I do when they're going after the quarterback. I'm like, "Flatten him, squish him." That's what I was always shouting at the screen to get the quarterback really bad. So I like the fact that Murph, we just had a quick message from Kev from New Hampshire to say that the film you're after is The Longest Yard.
Thank you very much, Kev. I appreciate that, man. I don't know. Don't get old, people. Don't get old. All the football movies kind of. But yeah, it's The Longest Yard, where you just sit there and clothesline anybody coming through, and that's what happens to Judon, time and time again, and it's just maddening. It's maddening that you can literally scream holding on every single play when you're sitting there focused on this kid, but it's another reason why Uche has been so important this year, and with bringing back Barmore. Well, you've got two guys over there. They literally there were three guys holding him on one play in the third quarter or the fourth quarter of Sunday's game. And I had to get up and leave the room. Because I couldn't.
Oh, that's how we get you to leave. Is that how I get you to leave then? I just show you
Judon
being held and then you'll leave. No, that's not what I was getting at. That's not what I was getting at. Anyway,
okay.
I know we're talking defense, and I know we kind of flip-flop between offense and defense, but something that you mentioned as kind of come up with this, Evan, you said about predictability on the offense. And do you foresee the Patriots bringing back a fullback for kind of next season, if you like, this year, next season? They haven't been disguising plays very well. And that's one thing that obviously having a fullback in there doesn't do. It shows up what your play is going to be. But they've been kind of unsuccessful in the take of the play sort of thing. So is it a point of you might as well have a fullback in there because you're not disguising the plays, and at least you've got more chance of being successful with those plays with that fullback in? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it all depends on who's coordinating the offense next year and what direction they want to take it in. I think from a degree, the lack of fullback has been more or less put on Matt Patricia, right? And saying, oh, this offensive coaching staff didn't want a fullback. But I think when you look at the quarterback, and I would also say when you look at Ramondre Stevenson as well, because he's been pretty vocal with us this season about how he actually prefers to run without a fullback. And there are a lot of guys that are like that. And Murph can speak to this a little bit better than me because I was a youngin', but Emmitt Smith ran with a fullback.
Right.
Barry Sanders did not run with a fullback. And Barry Sanders always used to say, when I ran with the fullback, I felt like I was in a box, right? Like I had to run behind the fullback every single time. And there was really no freedom to scan.
It was just somebody else to get out of his way.
Right. Whereas when there wasn't a fullback, and this is sort of the mantra that Ramondre has said, it allows him to kind of pick his spots, right? And scan the line of scrimmage and sort of pick where he wants to go. And
nobody's telling him.
Yeah, and that's why I think he gets a lot of those big runs from, like the one on 2nd and 18 in the game on Sunday, where he's just kind of slaloming through defenders and things like that. And I think there's something to be said for that. Now, to the question about Bill O'Brien, I think it's a good question. He notoriously has not used a fullback in his career for the most part. But I would also mention that, so in 2011, which was really his offense, they were 12 personnel, right? Because they had Gronk and Hernandez. When he was with Houston, he didn't use a fullback because he had a mobile quarterback. So there's really no reason to use a fullback in that offense. They used multiple tight ends, but they weren't an under center power team for good reason. Right. And then he goes to Alabama, which really isn't a fullback offense either. So I don't know how much of that is Bill O'Brien versus the personnel that he's had in his coaching career has moved him away from a fullback. But I think the one thing I would say for sure about the fullback is that this team could really use a fullback for short yardage situations, like 3rd and 1 on Sunday, and they're calling play action because they don't think that they can run for it. If you have a James Devlin, Jakob Johnson battering ram in front of Ramondre Stevenson on 3rd and 1, you're running the football all day long. Down in the red zone and the goal line, where they've struggled this year, instead of having to run all these ridiculous pass plays that they've drawn up to try to get it in the end zone, first and goal from the 5-yard line with the fullback in the backfield and we're downhill at you. Like, that's the type of offense that I always thought when you're in short yardage, you got to be able to pick it up on the ground. And this team has kind of struggled in that department, whereas over the years, they've been one of the best teams in the league at running the football in short yardage situations. And I think a lot of that had to do with having a fullback.
Michael Onwenu had a very difficult game on Sunday, but it was a rarity. What exactly was the issue there? And is it something that we're going to need to worry about going forward?
I thought he was good in pass protection against Christian Wilkins, who's a really good player. And I think some of that had to do with it. I'm not sure. I don't know. He's been a really solid player. And I think a lot of what Miami was doing was actually isolating David Andrews in this game. And Andrews, I thought, had a little bit of a tough time in pass protection, getting walked back into the quarterback. So I think a lot of what's going on with Onwenu, just in general, is he's getting a lot of one-on-ones, right? Because a lot of the slides or the attention is going to Cole Strange. And so they are helping out the rookie a ton. Andrews, especially in passing situations, when you watch Andrews, he's opening to Cole Strange.
Right. Every single snap. Yep.
Yeah. So it leaves Onwenu one-on-one a ton. And he's going to lose some of those and win some of those. And I think that's a big part of it as well. The Dolphins did a nice job, though, I thought, of isolating the guards by putting somebody over David Andrews and not really allowing David Andrews to be a free player and help out to Cole Strange and to Onwenu. And that, I think, was a big factor because Andrews had a little bit of a down game in this one as well.
He did. How banged up is Andrews right now? To me, he looks a little bit slower, in between each snap, and being able to really get that punch off that he's been able to. Is it injury or is it babysitting Cole Strange?
Probably a little bit of both, but I think at this time of year, everybody's starting to have injuries, bumps and bruises, and wear down a little bit. Like I said, I think a really good part of the Miami defensive game plan was they had somebody over Andrews the majority of the time when the Patriots were throwing the football, especially to try to make him block one-on-one and not be just, kind of looking for work, right? As we call it in the O-line room and find guys to hit and help to. A lot of his responsibility was right in front of him. And I think sometimes for a center, that's difficult. When you snap the football, you have to, then you get your head up when you snap the football and all of a sudden you got a 320-pound nose tackle bull rushing you. It's a lot to do in a split second. And I think that impacted Andrews in this game. I thought that there were times there in the first half, especially where Mac Jones was under a lot of pressure in this game. It seemed to get a little bit better as the game wore on. They've had all sorts of trouble picking up blitzes.
Quarters.
Yeah, they've had all sorts of trouble picking up blitzes. And I tried to ask Andrews about this the other day, and he wouldn't really get too much into the particulars about how much control he has in the line of scrimmage and his communication. And, I don't know. It's tough to tell because we can't hear the audio on the field.
Right.
But over the years, I just always remember, he's pointing this, pointing that guy out, looking back at the quarterback, like, hey, maybe we should slide this way, or maybe we should point that way and stuff like that. And I just don't see as much of that happening with David Andrews this year on film. So I wonder how much of that they've sort of taken off his plate or taken away from him, and if it would help to put it back on his plate, because last 2 weeks they just got guys blitzing that are unblocked or are not being blocked, in a timely manner. 3rd and 1, Landon Roberts shoots the gap, and Ramondre Stevenson's got no chance, right?
None.
Later in the game, Ramondre whiffed on another blitz up the middle with his eyes peeking outside. The guy comes up the middle instead, and he's beat. Those blitzes need to stop. And I know a lot of people have come after Mac Jones. I've tried to defend Mac Jones a little bit. And I think a lot of the aesthetic of Mac Jones out there is, him just not being able to get out of the pressure, and because he's not athletic, right? And he can't Lamar Jackson it, where all of a sudden the blitz comes up the middle and he just runs away from the blitzer. But that's not really that's not really his fault, right? That's not his game, and it's not his fault that it's not getting picked up. So they need to figure out a better way to pick up blitzes, because teams are just going to keep blitzing them until they prove that they can do it.
Evan, when you're on, I always want to ask really smart questions. I try and ask a smart question anyway, but when you're on, I just try extra special. So this one might be a bit of a dumb one, but it is something that is sort of, it's just a topic that I kind of wanted to get in and discuss with you. And because of sort of the timing of it in regards to Matthew Slater, I mean, special teams hasn't been as good this season as we've known. I'm not putting this on Slater's shoulders, by the way, but as he's an integral part of special teams, it's kind of really seemed to crumble, and it's always been a strength of the Patriots. Now, there's obviously a lot of speculation that this was, you know, Slater's last home game. This is his last season, age, that kind of thing. And I fully appreciate that. Do you think there's any chance of, if Slater wanted to remain on the team, that if Bill wanted him kind of on the roster, but he's in a position where he would need to be playing less just because he's kind of getting to that stage in his life when he's like, I can't kind of take this anymore. Do you think there's any chance that they would use a roster spot for him and not utilize him very much on the field because of the value that this guy has kind of off the field for the Patriots as a whole? Or is that just kind of crazy talk?
It's a good question. They do it with Brian Hoyer, so
yeah.
I can't really sit here and say that they wouldn't do it. It's a little bit different, I suppose, in the kicking game, because you're just limited numbers wise there anyway, and it's not like a backup quarterback slot that you already know that you're going to carry. I don't necessarily think the issues that they've had on special teams are related to Slater, though. So I guess that maybe that, you know, what I've seen with them on special teams right now is that they have some younger guys that they're trying to integrate onto special teams and hopefully become guys that are core special teamers for years to come, like a Brendan Schooler, like a Pierre Strong. And when you have guys like that out there on special teams that are young, that are first year in the league, there's going to be some undisciplined play. And that's basically all that I've seen for the most part. They've had one punt block, and I think that was more of a kerfuffle with the communication from the sideline than it was necessarily a technique or an execution of the play. And then they also have had a couple of running into the punter penalties in coverage, and those are the ones that I feel like the undisciplinedness of it comes out, right? Yep. Where you have 4th and 6 or 4th and 1, excuse me. And no, it was 4th and 6. And they're back
4th and 1 that turned into 4th and 6 that turned into 4th and 1. Oh, God.
Yeah. 4th and 6. And I guess in theory, the thought was, okay, running into the punter here, it's still 4th down. But they knew that the Dolphins are prepared to go for it on 4th and 1 before the false start penalty. So making it 4th and 1 again means that they're going to go for it, right? So I just, when I looked at that in Minnesota as well, they rushed the punter in Minnesota, and it was 4th and 3. So you know that if you run into the punter, it's a first down, right? And these are the types of things that I look at with the coordination of special teams with Cam McCord, and just deciding when is it worth it, right? To be aggressive in these decisions, and when is it not? Now, I think in this particular game, they went after the punter because they didn't have Marcus Jones. So they're not expecting any big returns, right? And I guess there's some truth to that. But it kills me when they do these things because the defense plays lights out. They get a 3rd down stop. They get the false start on the Dolphins to force a punt, and now the Dolphins' offense is right back on the field. And this is why this defense, to me, when it's broken this year, this is why, is because they are out there. They're exhausted. And there's so much pressure on them to be perfect every single possession that the offense has. And I would just, everybody puts out there that, you know, the Patriots are, all 8 wins are against backup quarterbacks or Jared Goff, and they haven't stopped any elite quarterbacks all year, and Allen and Burrow and, Rodgers earlier on in the year or whatever. But what would happen if the defense actually was being complemented properly by the offense and special teams? Like, what would happen?
They wouldn't be as one out.
If the offense was actually possessing the football, not going 3 and out 4 times in the middle quarters, and actually helping out the defense a little bit where they could play with a lead.
Can I just get a blow?
When they
I'm sorry, what? This is a family show.
Yes, it is. Ish. I didn't say. There was no suffix to the blow. It was just. It was just. I would like a breather here, people. And this offense does not give the defense enough of a breather, and it showed on that play, and it showed late. It showed late in this game, allowing the Dolphins to march down the field at the end, and get that last touchdown. Guys were just tired. Guys were just exhausted.
Yeah.
Evan, we've got a question from Chris. Sorry. Can you see a change in special teams coordinator in 2023? Do you think I want to kind of add to that. Do you think there is enough, or that we've seen enough that they need to maybe shuffle it about a little bit?
I've seen enough over the last 2 years to really start considering it. I go back to that game last year against Indianapolis where they essentially lost the game on a punt block, and then they also, I believe, had a offside on a kick on a field goal where the kicker missed the field goal and it cost them 3 points in that game. So special teams really lost them 10 points in that Colts game. And you look at the Minnesota game this year, a kickoff return touchdown. And then you also look at the running into the punter for Pierre Strong. So that's probably another 10 to 14 points on special teams that you're giving up. You're getting to the point where that is definitely in the conversation. And I think that if there are drastic changes with the Patriots coaching staff, I know there's a lot of clamoring, not inside the building necessarily, but outside the building, to just move Joe Judge back to special teams, right? And just have him as a special teams coordinator where he probably belongs, and bringing in an entirely new offensive coaching staff. And I think there's certainly something to be said for that. And with all that being said, I really do like Cam McCord. I think he's a good. I think he's a good coach, and I love his energy. He's somebody that has infectious energy. I know sometimes that manifests itself in tirades on the sideline when they screw up on special teams, but he has a really a good energy to him, and I do think guys play hard for him in the kicking game. But the details just haven't been there over the last couple of years, and you start to look at all the issues they've had on special teams, and at some point, would another coach retain his job in this position? I think it's a fair question to ask. And I certainly think that that's on the table of moving Judge, maybe not permanently back to special teams, but maybe that's part of his job description is special teams while they have a new offensive staff and he's sort of quality control on special teams. Maybe he might already be doing stuff like that. I don't know, but that's sort of where my head is at. With it is that you have a guy in the building in Joe Judge that can clearly help you improve on special teams from a coaching standpoint. And it just seems like that's such an easy fix.
That's a good one. Sorry, Murph. So that's just kind of came to me since you said that. He's with Judge in the building. Granted, he's not in there for special teams, but with him in the building, surely they could have utilized him a little bit to kind of improve the special teams, because it hasn't been great, as you said, for 2 years. I mean, we've got Matty P kind of sharing his duties with different departments, which is probably a bad thing, but do you think sort of why they might have not done that in this case in regards to sort of sharing a bit of Judge into the special teams department?
Yeah, look, I think the whole coaching staff on offense is spread awfully thin. And his technical role as quarterbacks coach. And I don't really know a lot of the time from when we get to see practice during training camp, especially when they're working on the kicking game on this field, the quarterback is on the other field, usually throwing to some of his specialized, players that don't necessarily play in the kicking game. So maybe, Hunter Henry's over there with Mac Jones working on red zone fades, and Jacoby Myers might be over there working with Mac Jones or Ramondre or something like that on route running and little technique things. So there are things going on simultaneously to working on kickoff coverage, let's call it, that are going on. And somebody's got to coach that, right? Somebody's got to be over there. With those guys. So my guess is that's been Joe Judge all year long has been over on the side field. But if you have a new quarterbacks coach, or you have an offensive coordinator next year, whose job is to do that, Bill O'Brien, then maybe
subliminally putting it out there.
Don't count on it, people. There's going to be a lot of coaching opportunities, head coaching opportunities coming up, and I just have a sneaky feeling that O'Brien is going to be in the conversation in a lot of rooms.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I know that as a head coach, he hasn't been very good, but I would also, wouldn't hate Cliff Kingsbury coming back here as an OC. So we'll see if we get there.
Cliff's a good OC.
Whenever I throw names out there like Cliff Kingsbury, and people are always like, "Oh, he sucks in Arizona," it's like, he sucks as a head coach in Arizona. This is a different job, right? We're not asking him to manage a 2-minute drill, or when do you call your timeouts, or when do you challenge, or all that. We're not asking him to be the head coach. You're asking him to draw up plays and coordinate an offense. It's a different animal. So whoever does come in, because I do think they are going to bring somebody in. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be a true offensive coordinator like a Josh McDaniels, where it's just clear what his job is, right? I don't know if it's going to be that, but they're going to bring an experienced coach in on the offensive side of the ball to try to clean this up. I think that's a given at this point, and maybe that allows some guys like Judge to do a little bit more.
We just talked about how thin the coaching staff is. For decades now, this coaching staff has been backloaded by guys climbing the ladder. When was the actual last time that Bill interviewed a coach? Can you think of it off the top of your head? I was trying the other day, and I
don't know how those conversations exactly go in terms of interviewing a head coach, or excuse me,
I just mean coach. somebody from the outside being brought in.
I think the last one would have to be Jed Fish, right? In 2020, he was brought in to be quarterbacks coach under Josh McDaniels. He's only here for a year because he took the job at University of Arizona, but he's probably the last one that I can think of that wasn't, we're going to talk to Ross Douglas here in about 30 minutes. He's on a fellowship, right? He went to Rutgers, and then he graduated from Rutgers, was a graduate assistant on their staff, right, I think for a year or two. And then he comes here on a fellowship program and was started at the bottom, right, of the coaching ranks, and is starting to work his way up. And now is the assistant wide receivers coach to Troy Brown. So those are what we normally see. But I would say Jed Fish is probably the last guy that I can remember off the top of my head in 2020 who was brought in more from the outside and then, sort of interviewed like that, if you will. Obviously they had, in 2015, 2014, they had Googs, right? I can never pronounce his last name, so I just call him Googs, coaching the offensive line when Dante Scarnecchia retired initially from there. So maybe a guy like Carm Brasillo on the line too, once Scarnecchia retired the second time. But he was here with Scarnecchia, I believe, for 1 year before Dante hung it up again. So we'll see. I think that offensive line coach is another one that I look at and say I would love to have an actual dedicated, experienced offensive line coach come in here next year as well. And maybe
I can't think of his name, but the guy at Ohio State, I want him. Oh God, their offensive line coach is just amazing. And I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry I keep doing that today. Sorry, I had no sleep last night.
But look, there's guys out there, and maybe Bill O'Brien or Cliff Kingsbury, whoever the hell the offensive coach is next year, has his own guy, right? That's usually how these things work. And I think that there's going to be an element to that as well that I'll just mention. If they do bring in somebody like Bill O'Brien, he's going to want to bring in his own coaches, right? Like it's not going to be just a complete carryover from last year. when you have a whole new offensive coordinator. So Nick Caley's in a contract year, the tight ends coach. He's probably going to end up in Vegas. I think that's where he wants to be anyways with Josh McDaniels. So you're going to have an opening there. I think you're going to potentially have a new O-line coach. I think you might potentially have a new wide receivers coach or somebody else helping out Troy Brown at wide receiver, because that certainly hasn't been a great position.
No, and that's a great point. Why hasn't Troy been under the scrutiny that other coaches on this staff have been? Is it just because of, his background here and what he was able to do as a player?
Yeah, look, he's been under scrutiny on my shows. I can tell you that because I've been the one talking about it. So I'll be the first to say that if you're going to sit there and we're going to talk about how the receivers aren't running good routes and the spacing is off and the timing is off in the passing game and this guy's regressing and that guy's regressing, like, they're getting coached by somebody, right? And it's the wide receivers coach. So he has to take some of this, right? I think he has to take some of this blame that's being given here on this.
Thank you, Joel. Justin Fry. Oh,
yeah. They have some good coaches at Ohio State. Who's the former NFL wide receiver who's coaching their wide receivers now? And I'm blanking on right now.
Yeah.
That he's like one of the best in the business. I mean, just look at that factory.
Our chat room is the best because they'll just come up with everything. Whenever we blank on something, there's Joel or Chris or somebody coming in. Somebody that I've never met before coming in and throwing the right name out there. Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, they got some great coaches at Ohio State. But yeah, I've been talking about Troy Brown. He's been on my radar for a couple weeks now because you can't have an offense that has poor spacing, poor awareness, poor route running, and not blame the wide receiver coach for some of it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Troy as well. That's a tougher guy to move on from, I think, just because of his experience here. But it'll be interesting to see.
Well, let's talk about the Slim Reaper for a second. He's finally being, let go out there. He had one touchdown on Sunday. He should have had 3. Are we going to keep seeing? I brought up the fact last week that with this receiving core, and we talked about it earlier with the tight ends, but with the wide receivers also, that less seems to be more.
Yeah.
All right. If one of these guys is out, then the wide receiving core seems to be more productive. Do you see that? And do you see him working in getting more involved in the offense as we finish out the season and hopefully get into the playoffs?
Well, with Tyquan, I think it was a couple of things have happened so far that I have seen. One is that his route running has been broken for about a month or 6 weeks now in terms of his horizontal cuts, right? Like running, Tyquan run a 12-yard dig, right? Yep. Like it just doesn't happen in the way that you want that to happen. So he's a vertical guy right now. That's just what he is. And I think the quarterback loves him. I think the quarterback absolutely loves him because not only do I think Mac wants to air it out, because every quarterback wants to air it out and throw the ball deep because chicks dig the long ball. So, of course, he wants to do that. And, Claire.
They do.
We do?
Yeah. It's a baseball.
Thing. This is news to me. This is news to me. Okay.
It's more of a baseball thing, and maybe across the pond that might not be as popular.
Too.
Right.
Yeah, chicks dig the long ball. Absolutely. Okay. So Mac Jones wants to throw it out deep. He wants to show that he's got the arm strength and he can hit the deep ball and all this kind of stuff. All right. So there's to some degree, I think he falls into that a little bit too much. But regardless, I think that when he throws to Tyquan, it also kind of reminds him of throwing to the guys he threw to in college, because he's a similar type of player to Devontae Smith or a Jalen Waddle. These fast but quite frankly skinny wide receivers that are 180 pounds soaking wet, but they can really run. And I think that those are the guys that he prefers to throw to maybe a little bit than, let's say, like a Devontae Parker type, who's just a big guy that you kind of have to throw to even when he's covered. So in that respect, I think it's good. I also think that in this game, they started to figure out a little bit more what I want to see them do with Tyquan moving forward. when they put him on the boundary and they just have him run routes, like he's just not a prototypical X because he just gets smothered at the line of scrimmage, right? He just doesn't have the physicality coming off the line of scrimmage to get off of press coverage. So when they just put him out there and they pin him to the boundary, he's had a tough time this year with stacking and getting over the top of defenders. But when they bring him in motion like they did on Sunday on the opening drive, and then they run him from that condensed split closer in tight to the formation, it gives them that entire pocket of space into the boundary, into the sideline to just open up and run into. When they put him in the slot like they did on the seam shot, he doesn't face press, right? He's
beautiful.
Right. There's not anybody in his way to prevent him from getting up the field. So when they move him around a little bit more and they play him off the line of scrimmage or they play him in the slot, it allows him to avoid contact, right? And that's the biggest thing with him that I see is that when he's contacted, he can be covered pretty easily. But when they allow him to open up his strides and get going, he's a tough guy to cover because of that speed. So if they continue to do things like that, where they move him around the formation and they allow him to get off the line of scrimmage and basically scheme up ways to help him get off the line of scrimmage, then I really think that they're going to see more production from him. So hopefully that was a sign of things to come on Sunday.
They need to go back and look at tape of Danny Amendola and how they used him and used Tyquan in the same way. There's 2 feet of difference in their game, but what he's going to be able, what he's able to do, especially in the red zone, running across that back line, and it's an underutilized weapon that they should be using a hell of a lot more. Go ahead, Claire.
Hold on, I've lost audio. Bear with me.
Claire can't hear us. Let's talk about Claire. Let's talk about Claire.
I'm having technical issues.
Okay, we're sorry. All right, but going forward into this Bills game, how do you see the Patriots attacking this Bills defense? I see another sling it type of day.
Yeah, I think that's really where I'm at with the whole Patriots offense is at this point of the season, you are in a playoff game on Sunday against Buffalo. And if you're going to be in this type of game, go down swinging, right? And I know already that they're going to do some of the stupid stuff that they did the last time, but if they try
didn't work.
If they tried the quick game screen crap that they were trying against Buffalo the last time, then that's so it's so weak, right?
Attack the mid range, attack downfield.
Let them stand in the pocket and let them try to go out there and win the game. More than likely, that means he fails, right? That's the bottom line. Is that more than likely they lose that game playing like that, but at least you're going down falling on the sword. You're not just trying to, you're not one of those guys that just stumbled off a cliff by accident and to his own death, right? You're somebody that's actually trying to go out there and win a football game, just like they did against Miami. I really thought against Miami, they opened it up and tried to push it down. I think they did that against Miami because they knew they were going to get man coverage. And they knew that the Dolphins secondary was banged up, right? No Xavier Howard, no Byron Jones, no Nick Needham. They're on backups everywhere. The Bills might not be in the same department, right? They're going to have Tre'Davious White back out there. Obviously got way overshadowed by DeMar Hamlin, but Johnson, their nickel, he went down in the game early as well. So we'll see what his status is. He's probably their best defensive back now. Him and Poyer. Because Tre'Davious White's still coming back from that ACL, so he's not really the same guy. But Johnson in the slot or in that nickel role is as good as anybody in that role as you've seen in the NFL this year. So if he can't play in this game either, then we'll see. I think the Patriots are going to have some opportunities to throw the football down the field, and I would just love to see that happen. And just go down fighting, right? Go down with your quarterback trying to go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and hope for the best.
Do you expect Parker back this week?
I don't expect him back. I think at this point, I don't really expect him back for the year.
Right.
I think they haven't put him on IR because concussions are that weird one day he could wake up and maybe he's starting to feel a lot better, right? You just don't really know with concussions. I think Marcus Jones and Jonnu Smith will have a chance to play in this game, though. And, some of the rumors that we've heard, nothing confirmed, but some of the rumors is that this game actually could be moved to Monday, depending on what they decide to do with Bengals Bills and DeMar Hamlin's status. So there's a chance that they might have an extra day here. And if that's the case, then maybe they could get those concussion guys, not Parker, but get Jonnu Smith and get Marcus Jones back, which I think would be really a big one with Marcus Jones especially.
Evan, I know that kind of it's pushing it forward a little bit because we've still got a couple of games to go, but this is the last time I'll probably get to speak to you before that. And I just wanted to ask, do you think the Patriots are basically in the same place in regards to what they need going into the draft? Now, I'm not asking you to talk about the draft because obviously I know that that's not yet, and that's really a topic for soon. But it just seems to me that when we've started the conversations about what the Patriots are going to need, what they need to look for 2023, and I suddenly looked at sort of what was being said in regards to offensive linemen, cornerback, and that number one wide receiver that everybody sort of has been salivating for. It feels like a bit of deja vu. It feels like we're sitting actually how we were sitting at and am I wrong in thinking this, or do you sort of see it the same way? It's almost as if nothing has developed over this 1 year that we've had.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I just go back to the first round last year with Cole Strange, and I've been picking on Cole Strange since the day they drafted him. So I feel a little bit bad about that. Not really, but a little bit. And, I think the biggest thing with it was that we've heard Bill say in the past that you don't draft based on need, because if you miss on the player, then you just still have a hole, right? Yep. So you just draft the best player on your board so that you don't whiff, right? Like that's just basically the mindset. And I know that that's not perfect because
Kyle Duggar,
no matter what.
That's why you get Kyle Duggar,
right? But you drafted Cole Strange at guard, and I'm not saying that he's a bust, but I just can't fathom that was the best player available on the board.
It wasn't
at the time,
but he wasn't going to be there later,
right? And so they picked him, and now, because he's a rookie from Chattanooga and has a lot of developing to do, we're still talking about offensive line as an issue for this team because he wasn't pro ready. So I think and I know Garden wouldn't have necessarily fixed everything, but having a sturdy front, three for Mac Jones to step up in the pocket would help the tackles a whole lot. But when Mac Jones looks to step up in the pocket and Cole Strange is getting bull rushed into his lap, there's no pocket to step up into. Nope. So,
but this is the hole that Bill dug himself in trading away offensive linemen and allowing them to walk out the door, pulling contracts back off and lowering his offer to people. He dug his own grave here, and now he has no choice. And unfortunately, the Patriots only have one first-round pick, and they can't address every single need. You're not going to get a stud in the 4th and 5th round when it comes to a wide receiver. All right. You've got to take those guys in the top 15, and Bill's going to have to use that pick on an offensive lineman again.
Yeah. So there are some good ones in the draft. The left tackle from Ohio State, the left tackle from Georgia. Those two guys are going to be first round picks. The kid out of Northwestern, I think, is declared as well, and he's going to be a good player in the league. I always come back to his offensive lineman, though. It's pretty simple for me. It's just, first and foremost, when we get to the combine, you hand Dante Scarnecchia like 10 tapes and you tell him, like, pick the best one out of this group and let us know who you like. And then when we get to May, when they get rookie minicamp going, you pay Dante like $100,000 to just like put him through like a 2-week boot camp, right? You just like you don't have to come back and coach, Dante.
Right.
Like, we're not asking you to coach the whole season, but we drafted Broderick Jones in the first round. Can you come in and sharpen up his technique for 2 weeks and kind of do what Tom House would do with a quarterback or something like that, but with the offensive lineman? And with Cole Strange, I think he's got good potential, and he's going to be a solid player for them for his rookie contract, and then we'll see if they end up paying him. But he's got to get on that Joe Thuney workout plan, right? Like that guy's got to have more sand in his pants. And I know it drives Murph nuts, because I know that nothing drives Murph more nuts than offensive linemen that get pushed around, right? Like that, I just know absolutely drives him up a wall.
It does.
And so getting it, we drop the anchor, sand in the pants, like whatever you want to call it. That guy has got to hit the weight room, right? Like
he
it's
does.
just that simple. And he's got a big frame, like he's like 6'4".
Yeah.
He's got a big enough frame to add some more meat to the bone. So he's got to figure out a way to get in the weight room.
Yep.
We want some more meat on the O-line. We want beefier O-line.
I want him to be athletic. That's who he is, right? He's got good feet, and he's an athletic kid. I'm not asking him to be Mike Onwenu, but he's got to be able to hold up against those interior power rushers. And every time he goes up against a good rusher, DJ Reader for the Bengals just took his lunch money.
It
took
did.
Him behind the
he
barn
took his took his varsity letter jacket and his girlfriend, and it drove me freaking bonkers.
Yeah.
Get into the thoroughbred room. Load up on the pasta and then go do squats for 4 hours, please. Please, I'm begging you.
Yeah. He will. He's a lunch pail type of guy.
He will. He's a worker.
Types of kids. Yeah.
He's a worker, and it's one of the things that I liked about him after seeing him in the Senior Bowl, and the work ethic is there. So God, man, we're already into overtime.
We're like way overtime.
And Easy has to get going. Easy, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
No problem.
You have honestly never said no to me, in 10 years. In 10 years, never said no to coming on the show. Tell everybody what you've got in the hopper for this week, what we can expect, and where they can follow you on social medias.
Yeah, at Easy Lazar on Twitter. Patriots.com obviously is the home of all of my written work. And Patriots Catch 22 pod with myself and Alex Barth will be on Thursday this week. Video edition, hopefully again on YouTube as well. And we're going to operate this week like normal until the NFL tells us that Bills Patriots is moved, if it is going to be moved, because of what happened last night. So everything we're having a show today, Wednesday, Thursday on Unfiltered, and everything's going to be as normal for the Patriots, at least until the NFL tells us otherwise.
How's Atlas for you?
He's great. Yeah, he's doing great. He doesn't love the winter because he's a short-haired dog, so he gets cold. But we got all sorts of coats and sweaters for him and stuff like that to keep him warm. So he's good.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. It's been a great dog. All right, man. All my best to Garen, and of course, throw a ball to Atlas for me, and not too far because my bursitis is acting up. Go ahead, Claire. Take us out.
Well, as Evan did mention, we want to just quickly pay tribute to what happened at the Bengals-Bills game in regards to Damar Hamlin. The wide receiver. I've stumbled over this really badly now. I apologize. When he kind of hit the tackle with the wide receiver T. Higgins, and it was reported that he got back up and then collapsed, and he had CPR on the field, but then was rushed to hospital with a heartbeat. They have said. We've got nothing further here on Patriots Place to report on that. Obviously, please go to social media to kind of get more updates in regards to that. And our prayers go out to him and his family at this time. We did want to do a One Patriots Place today, and I fully understand that some people think or believe that maybe football isn't foremost on their minds at the moment, and we fully appreciate that. We just wanted to put this out there for Patriots fans who kind of did want to just listen to some Patriots chat, and we were fortunate to get Evan. You have some availability today, so we put this show out very respectfully in regards to all that. So we appreciate anybody that's listened and joined in, and we hope that we've given you an hour of some interesting Patriots talk still. So thank you very much for watching this episode of One Patriots Place. I have been Claire Cooper. He has been Thomas Murphy. As always, a great thanks to Evan Lazar for his time and his insight. So tune in next time, folks, and go Pats.
Steve, we miss you already.